Okay, everyone, thank you so much for taking time from your busy camp schedule to join us in this beautiful villa with this beautiful view and this incredibly talented group of speakers and panelists that we have here today. My name is Rita. I have the pleasure of leading the education team at Semrush, now an Adobe company. And in my role, I think my favorite part of my job is that I get to speak to so many customers, Semrush users, business owners, to understand how they are tackling AI search, what are their challenges, and how we can help as a business and also as a product. So this is a small session. It's meant to be quite conversational, so I'll be asking questions of all of you throughout, but I'm curious from the folks in this room, how many of you are already measuring AI visibility for your businesses? Okay, so quite a lot of you. Now, how many of you feel really confident in how you're doing that? Okay, yeah, yeah, the trend holds. And next question is, how many of you feel confident in the plan that you have to improve AI visibility for your brands? Okay, so that is consistent with what I see when I speak to folks. I think AI visibility is important. That's not a debate anymore. I think it's why we're here. It's why many of us have come to Cannes, actually, broadly, to understand how we can show up in the place where most customers are searching for information right now. The gap is really the execution in figuring out, what do I do about it? How do I make my brand show up, not just be there, but also show up accurately and be recommended by these platforms. So to have that conversation, we have an incredibly talented group of panelists. We do a lot of work at Semrush to try to help customers and users be successful with AI search. And in that process, we have developed a 4-layer framework that we believe really sort of simplifies an approach to AI search that can help a company be successful. And so this is not a lecture. We're not going to go through the 4 layers like deeply in this conversation, but we're going to use this really as a structure for the conversation and also for our approach to AI search in general. So the 4 layers are listed right here. We're going to go one by one, asking questions from our very talented panel and then opening it up for all of you for questions and comments. So the first layer in this framework is discoverability. And this is the layer that is most closely tied to the work that SEOs do. It's about whether AI platforms can find and retrieve the content that already exists on your site. So Kevin Indig, for anyone who doesn't know him, he is a growth advisor and the author of Growth Memo, which is in my inbox reliably every week, and honestly my favorite Substack to read, so thank you, Kevin, for being here. You've written a ton about the intersection between SEO and AI search. What would you say to a customer that says, I'm doing everything right in AI search, I'm showing up at the top of Google rankings, therefore I really don't need to do anything else to show up in AI platforms? Would you say that's true or not? How would you respond?
I would say it's half true. There is the truth that SEO or classic search rank really is a skeleton of the body that is AI search, but it's not enough, right? There's veins, there's blood, there's muscle, there's tissue, there's more that you need on top of this. And a big part of that is that users or consumers are searching slightly differently. So they're using much, much longer prompts, on average 5 times longer than classic search keywords, which means that there's much richer context about their user intent, about their situation, about their context, and what they're trying to get. And so if you approach AI search with the same mindset and create the same content that you used to create for classic search keywords, you're missing out on a lot of deep intent that people can now convey with modern prompts. So we have to go much further beyond that, include much more direct research and conversations from customers in our content strategy. But there are also some particular technical traits of the content that we need to regard in order to make sure that agents and LLMs can properly understand our content.
Yeah, so a bit of an extension then from the SEO efforts. I'm curious, Pat, in your role leading marketing for some of Adobe's most prominent products, how has your team's structure, role changed as AI search has become more important?
Some of the things that Kevin was just mentioning too, I think it started with an analytics clarion call, maybe early days of kind of when LLMs were all inform based, and what they were doing was they were giving us new pipelines of information, and all of us kind of across our property suddenly saw categories of our websites start to really fall off dramatically. And I think some of us then we started to realize, and it was started as a web analytics problem, but then you started looking much more broadly, and you started realizing the categories of analysis that you had to look at to really figure out what potentially was happening. And I think this is a function of bringing together some of the paid teams, of course SEO teams, web analytics teams, but even PR and social and all these different pieces that are giving you insights as to like what people are saying, because it helps you corroborate what you're seeing on the LLMs. And I think the LLM data stream is really relatively poor relative to what we're all used to digging into. We have so much dimensionality and volume of data. You have to be much more directed on what you're going to look at, whether it be panel data or in the prompt volume data. So you have to start with a perspective, and it comes from everything from social conversations that you're analyzing, even content engagement. That's been one of the ones that we found to be most interesting to drive where to go look. And so all those teams, even on the analytics teams, started to kind of form into the basis of that kind of squad that then had to work together. It couldn't be isolated that then was synthesized for a report. It had to be more into a growth squad.
Did they come together like formally as a team or sort of as an ad hoc unit?
We kept adding teams, essentially. They came formally into a squad that we really brought together, and we brought together one of the growth marketers that could then marshal them and ask the right questions and set the right targets and kind of bring everyone together. And I think that allowed everybody to get to the same cadence of analysis and even the same kind of taxonomy. There was just some really simple vocabulary differences between our comms team and how they think of the world, or even affiliate marketers or some of the content teams. And so that, I think, is where it started. And I think where it turned into was even some of the product development stuff that we did, which was, we knew we're a web analytics company, we build a lot of product, of course, and the problem that we were facing is something that others are going to face too. And so that formed the basis of, we have a product called LLM Optimizer, which then started this exploration of Semrush and like the capabilities, which we're really excited. But it started with a simple concept, which was, we have a lot of folks that really understand web analytics. Omniture was a company that we bought years ago. It still is a core of a lot of what we do. And we could see a component going away. And that gave us an insight on what to go look for. And so if we saw people no longer coming to us to figure out how to use a filter in Photoshop, it's reasonable to say they're probably surfacing that on a prompt. And so then when we went looked, and sure enough, we saw this volume increase in prompt volume of people trying to do specific tasks when they used to come to us. And that then turned us into a kind of a product engineering, kind of product development cycle.
Oh, interesting. So it ties back to product. I'm curious, Leigh, who leads AI search for Semrush, and Crystal, you lead AI search and SEO communications for Wix. I'm curious how your teams have changed, if anything, or how the structure of how teams collaborate has changed in this new era of AI search.
I think the main thing is collaboration has increased significantly.
Yeah.
So I think
I can attest to that.
Semrush, as I think any big company, we historically operated in silos, different teams operating in really high capacity in their particular channels with the work that they care about. When AI search really started picking up for us, we realized there was a need to break down some of those silos, bringing new vocabulary together where we can all talk the same language. We can figure out a way to bring common language for the affiliate, the partner, the PR team with what the SEO team was already doing, and just fostering that communication. So we can figure out what are the important activities that we still need to be doing on the website, what are the new activities, and then beyond the website, what are all of the off-site activities that we need to do with affiliates, creators, and partners.
I think one of the most fundamental shifts is recognizing that keywords aren't enough, and that they're within the AI search ecosystem. There's two different places to play. There's the training data, which is what they just know about you. They don't look things up, but that's sort of what they feel in their ethers, in their waters about you. And then there's the RAG opportunity. So retrieval augmented generation when they're pulling out fresh content, and that's where the citation opportunity is that. So when you're thinking about your where you are in the training data, that's like the core of who you are and that sort of thing. And that's really important to make sure that you've got all those ducks in a row. And then when we think about RAG, it's a question of I always say about being fresh and spicy. So you want to think about new information, and net new information for the web, information that's exclusive to you. Kevin's really good at doing this. He does these reports all the time. And Steph Semrush has some great reports. We've done and we started doing like custom data reports about this, and we see them show up in LLMs really, really frequently. And that's something we've tapped into as well. And the thing is, like, they will have to cite you for that because you're the only one with that data. And people will come to your website because they won't trust the LLM to give you that information entirely. They'll come to your website because they want to know exactly what you said, and they want to know exactly what the statistic was and exactly what that is. And that comes down to like thinking about your website less as a destination and more as a resource for your clients, for your team, for everyone. You were saying that people are going to LLMs to look up how to use Photoshop, et cetera, et cetera. Like that's a win. Like that's a win for your brand that if they're going to find that. That's still a win. That means you've got happy customers who have the ability to unlock whole new parts of your software platform because of AI. Similarly, we've got an MCP attached to every Wix website that allows people to make their own Wix websites, that kind of resource. And we find that people are very happy to use those elements. And when you have your website as a resource, it unlocks many more potential and way more than you could with classic search. So it's not just about discoverability. It's about remembering like how people are discovering now, and that it's a new way for people to discover you.
Right. It's discoverability of the LLM of your site, but the way that your customer discovers your content might not be through your website anymore. Yeah. It might be through an LLM. Moving on to the next layer, making your site discoverable doesn't necessarily mean that your brand is being represented accurately. So, Crystal, you talked a little bit about the technical workings of these platforms, RAG, the base model. How do you ensure that an LLM portrays your brand correctly? What do you need to do to make that happen?
So very often it can be difficult because you have to ask yourself some hard questions. Like you have to ask yourself, where did we mess up? I have, when I'm working with people who are going through this exercise, I have a list of like 20 questions that I ask about, like, what is X? What are they known for? Who are their competitors? Why are they good? That sort of thing. And the exercise I tend to go to, it's really simple. You can pull up 20 questions that are just generic brand questions, and then you ask the same questions in ChatGPT, in Claude, in Gemini, and then you copy and paste all of those into one. Pick your AI bestie. And copy and paste it all into that and say, analyze this and tell me what, like on a scale of 1 to 10, like how consistent is this? And if it says 6, you have a problem somewhere, right? There's a problem somewhere. If it says, like, if one says that, Semrush does AI visibility, and the other one says Semrush does AI visibility, and the other one says Semrush is a potato farm, like that's bad, right? And somewhere, right? So somewhere and if you dig, I've seen this happen, if you dig somewhere online, somebody said something that is misconstruing you, and it might even be some old blog that you have. It might be an old press release that you have. It might be an old piece of coverage or an old podcast or something. And so you need to go and just fix all of those things and make sure that you are giving the LLM the confidence. Because one of the things that's important to remember is that when you ask ChatGPT a question, it's answering the question in real time. So as it's writing the words, it's doing the pattern recognition. It's pulling that out. So if there's a proliferation of the same phrasing, Mary had a little lamb, that'll be the next word they will expect that to be. And so if it's the case that somebody keeps saying the same thing about you, and sometimes it might be your competitors, then you have to put that in check, and you have to go and address that. But yeah, you have to dig deep. And it might be some tricky conversations with your team. It might be some tricky conversations with your competitors, but you need to find where the disconnect is and try to align the messaging so that there's a consistent proliferation of the information about you.
Seems easier said than done. No, in this framework, we sort of defined clarity as something that potentially the product marketing team or the brand team might own. But for the rest of the folks in the panel, and actually anyone in this room, who owns that work? Because sometimes I think it actually should be the CEO or the CMO that really defines what is our product, who is our target customer, how do we want to represent ourselves in the world, and then sort of distill that information down the organization. I think from my perspective, this is the hardest layer to nail down. What do you all think?
I would absolutely agree it's the hardest layer. And I think it does need to come from the C-level, whether it's the CEO or the CMO, or just a collaboration between the different C-suite leaders. It's really important to get it nailed down and have your message be consistently used across all platforms. You can't have the social team talking about the brand in one way that's different than the way the product team approaches it on the website, that the support team talks about within the knowledge base. Like, it all needs to be consistent. At a company like Semrush, we also need to handle a moving target. If you look at just the training data going back over the last 17 years, Semrush is an SEO company. We want to evolve the way the LLMs understand Semrush as just a total digital visibility platform. We help you optimize for your total search presence in traditional SEO rankings as well as AI search. So we need to go and make sure our product clarity is clear across the website, as well as all of our other platforms. All of the way our affiliate partners speak about us needs to reflect how our positioning has changed. And until that clarity is reached, there's opportunity for LLMs to incorrectly classify us as something we no longer are.
Yeah, it starts with internal alignment.
Yeah.
Like, have you seen that, Pat, at Adobe? And how do you all manage internal alignment around messaging, product?
I think it's an interesting tension between expecting C-level to do it where C-level is expecting the org to do it. Yeah. And I think they both would go like that. Yeah, that's right. I think. Like that Spider-Man. Yeah, exactly. I fear that expecting C-level to do it is maybe the wrong move. I think they're too far, and they would admit they're too far from the customers and what they need is. And I think that is, even at Adobe, like one of the conversations we're having on the product side is the product teams back in the day, Photoshop's another, I'll use Photoshop one more time. Like, they were like, we know what our customers need. We're going to build a feature and everybody's going to line up around and they're going to love it because it's the next thing. The world's changed pretty significantly where you can get so much more value for free through easier tools, but there's still this precision need. But unfortunately, maybe they don't have all the insight on the product teams to like what customers are really saying. So increasingly, they're coming to marketing and social teams, community teams to like help them understand how to show up. It's led to a speed, so we can speak much more quickly to the right customers in all these different pockets. It does create some too much diversification in how you're showing up, which is some of the issues where you're not repeating messaging. And so there's a little bit of this ebb and flow of like responding to what's in the market and then like a consolidation sorting hat of like, okay, these are the messages that matter. And I think that ebb and flow is okay.
So it's a combination of both. Anyone in the audience feel like they have nailed clarity for their organization? Yes.
I definitely haven't nailed it. But it's actually what I'm studying in my PhD. I'm researching it at the moment.
Oh, interesting.
Because I think the language is the problem. Like, we don't have a common language that sits across all of these parts of the organization that need to really align. So,
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that's what we're trying to do with our framework is give that common language to have brand visibility be the North Star that different teams, different departments can organize around. And if you have the same concepts, then you can eventually start optimizing for the same.
What's funny is that problem has already been solved before in the design world, right? Like, there's design language, there's design components, libraries that companies have that they all rely on. And I see the same thing hopefully happening on like the messaging and positioning world. And I see not enough companies reflecting back, like monitoring their own positioning and messaging, right? And I think it's possible these days with AI, with monitoring tools, to say, okay, let's crawl our website and our content continuously. Let's look at all the social posts going out, all the creative, everything that we use. Let's consistently monitor it and mirror it against where we want to be and position ourselves. Because it's complex, right? You have different companies, you have different segments, you have different products, right? If you talk about a big company, it's not like we have one product positioning and one messaging, right? It's very multifaceted. But I think technologically, it's the right time to say, okay, let's be as diligent as we are about design language.
That's so genius. I had never thought about it that way. Yeah. Like, big aha moment over here. I also think another layer of complexity with the clarity piece is the lack of KPI or clear KPI. And so you have social team running towards impressions and clicks, and then you have, SEO initially in the past, in fact, 5 years running towards traffic and rankings. But what does it mean to succeed in clarity from a KPI standpoint?
I think that particularly when you have a messaging challenge, if you find that there's a discrepancy, the KPI is fixing that. So if it's the case that like you start from A and you need to get to B, then that's something. So we, for instance, Wix is, we have an AI website builder, and that's something that we wanted to really push for. And we were one of the first AI website builders in 2016, and that was called ADI. And then we later launched another AI website builder. We've got a new one called Wix Harmony, and we have other AI website builder capabilities within our tool set. And so the LLMs would be like, yeah, Wix is great. They have ADI. And we were like, that is a tool from 10 years ago. And they just kept saying it. Now, the reason why they kept saying it was because ADI had a big PR splash. There was a big launch. It was like really big for a while. So our team spent a lot of time and effort trying to shift that narrative to make sure that we were bringing it up to date to the new place where we were. So the KPI for that was when we asked like AI website builder, does it say like formerly had ADI, now has this, like includes this product. So if we were seeing that with that, and the thing about it is for those ones, the change tends to be longer term because you're again working on training data. So essentially you need to wait until the model updates to see if the new model update has that new information. It's probably not going to happen in real time. Like you might still get some changes, but like if the model updates, then check it again. And if the information is new, then like that's a win. That's great. So I think that those are those, and also just to minimize the inconsistencies. So if you have more and more, the models have more and more confidence in describing you, and you have fewer inconsistencies. So let's say 75% of your prompts were inconsistent in January, and only 25% of them are inconsistent in October. Then like
that's how you track it. You just made a case for AI visibility tools. The idea of tracking this manually. You could do it, of course, but yeah, it's quite a lot of work. Okay, moving on to the next layer, authority. So the question that we ask here is, does your brand appear qualified to be included? This is where we're actually moving towards teams that really sit outside SEO, so PR, partnerships, community, etc. So I'm curious, Kevin, authority in SEO was like very tied to backlinks for a very long time. How would you define authority in the space of AI search?
Yeah, I think the simplest definition is, are you present on properties, usually websites, that your audience trusts? Right. So if you think about medical, like if you have a freckle that grows very fast, right? You probably want to go to a doctor. You don't want to go to, somebody who you don't trust. You want an authority that has filters, right? That needs an education or that is regulated, blah, 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 blah. And so what I'm seeing is that there's a sort of continuation of the old backlink world where companies are willing to pay absurd amounts of money to be listed on authority websites. Like absolutely absurd amounts of money, and it still works, and it's worth the money, right? So there is a reality where there is a small pool of highly trusted sites, depending on the area and topic that you operate in, where it's absolutely worth to be mentioned in the right way. So that's where we go beyond backlinks. Backlinks were mostly just, are you there, and is there a link to your site? But these days, it's much more about the mention. The hyperlink is actually not important at all, but are you mentioned in the right context, right? Are you mentioned as like the best X, for example? That would be ideal. But also, is there context on that site about your brand attributes and how you show up and who you work for, et cetera, et cetera? That's something that LLMs absolutely love and crave and probably will for a long time, because it is such a good filter against spam and against any sort of manipulation.
Yeah, it's an upvote. Like, yeah, this is a great company, great business. Pat, how do you approach authority, or how do you think about authority for Adobe?
I think it's similar to what Kevin was mentioning, where you have to do some of the things that we've been doing for years. I think will continue to work for a while. And I think there was Crystal, the example that you had, where the Photoshop feature example, we actually ran into this a couple times where what shows up is demonstrably wrong. Like, it's actually the wrong way to use the feature. And it's, of course, a Reddit post or something that we have to go and engage with. And like that kind of stuff is whack-a-mole, that you actually have to run after. I think it's interesting as we think through the evolution of, and we still like generalize LLMs a little bit here. And I think depending on where you are, you're going to be like, that may mean Google AI to you, it may mean OpenAI, it could be Grok, who the hell knows? But I think that also is interesting of like showing our level of maturity at this stage, understanding this. There's going to be a point at which we're going to have a currency, kind of like we did early on with, we think from PageRank days to kind of where we went on Google, where it kind of came to like utility and authority. Like, is the customer getting some value out of that ad or out of that organic link or not? And that starts to adjudicate like this type of content that we're creating or the places that we're putting the content. It kind of feels like we're going to head down that kind of path. And I think even as LLMs move into kind of more doing and less just informing. So one of the things we're talking a lot about is how are we thinking about making sure that our tools to do whatever that is, you can come straight to the site and perform something really quickly. Like there's some value exchange with the customer so they can leave the LLM and go back. And it may work for the LLM or whatever it is because they're just trying to drive subscribers and value and people will keep paying the subscriptions. But we had to get to like some of those core components. I think that will end up driving even your authority and then the customer value component. So I think it's a little bit of both.
Yeah. I think in this wonderful report, which I encourage all of you to read, great bedtime reading, we cite Patagonia as an example of a company that's done great at building authority. And I think what's interesting about the Patagonia case study is that a lot of that authority has been built organically by a very fanatical base of customers that just speaks about Patagonia online unprompted. So how much do you all think authority building is an intentional thing that brands have to go after and optimize for? As you mentioned, Kevin, like paid for your placement in a high authority site. And how much of this is doing good by your customer so that they will speak publicly in favor of your brands and products?
I think it's both. If you as a company are setting yourselves up for success where you really care about your customers, the product that you're selling solves real problems, and people are happy when they buy your product and they want to come back and be an advocate, they want to leave a review, they want to talk about it on Reddit. You want to build up that behavior, but you also want to figure out the type of content you need to create with partners, with affiliates, with YouTube creators to have enough sources to be cited when it comes to LLMs answering what is the best jacket or what's the best ski pants.
I think like product-led SEO, which is a classic. I know Eli Schwartz is in the building for the, or it's in the villa this week. So talk to him about it as well. But this whole thing comes out of product-led SEO. Like you said, I'm having conversations and I'm finding that my customers don't have a complete framework, and I want them to have a complete framework, and that's why you put this together. I built the AI Search Lab for the same reason. We do these things for a reason, and I think that people talk about Patagonia because they love Patagonia, right? They talk about Patagonia because it's really, really good and it helps them, achieve their goals. And so where we have products that actually solve problems that we know to be the case, because our customers tell us, they tell us they have a problem and we fix it, then that goes beyond LLMs, that goes beyond Google even. And I think that's really, really important. And I think that, one of the things I say is people shouldn't have to go to Reddit to find out about your product, right? If you're finding that people are trying to solve a problem and the only way they can solve it is to go on Reddit and have blind leading the blind trying to figure out what's going on, then that's an issue. You should be able to solving that problem on your website. You should be solving that problem with your product updates, with your service updates, with your offering, with that sort of thing. And so I think that real product need will help see through all of that. And I think that's really important. We do a lot of webinars, and we did a webinar together, and that came out of the same thing. We were both you were we're trying to get our head around agentic. We want to help people get their heads around agentic. So we just put that together. And I think that in those kinds of conversations, people will ask you questions. YouTubers are great at this. They'll say, "What questions do you want me to answer? Tell me what you want me to do." And that's something I think is really valuable, especially in this age.
I would like to add that there are some authority markers that brands can work towards, right? I think a lot of times we have that maybe illusion that authority is something that we cannot control, but you can include and promote your case studies, testimonials, reviews, certificates, analyst reports. Maybe there's less in your hand, but you can maybe provide some information, right? Any way that people or platforms that are seen as an authority in your space can talk about you, that is something that you can directly influence most of the time.
Okay, just a technical question before we move on to our final layer. I'm curious, who manages citation building in your organizations, or for the audience here, who is responsible for that role? Is it PR? Is it partnerships? Is it the SEO team, or a collaboration? PR for you all?
For us, it's becoming kind of a new team where it's a mix of affiliate and SEO outreach and PR. It's kind of what is the partner? Are we landing a placement in a tier 1 publication where we need a relationship? Or are we working with previously SEO blogs? Or is it a YouTube creator? We're trying to build a team that is able to figure out the right partnership and work with people accordingly.
So fresh team.
Yeah.
Existing team.
Expanded capabilities.
I think there's a push and a pull. So if you're tracking your AI citations, you can see where you're cited and where you're not cited. And so the places where you see that you aren't cited but you should be cited, that's the like, you know, the pull, as it were, where you might get in touch and go, hey, I noticed that you have that blog, like, you know, we should be included. And that's classic link building, classic backlink strategy or whatever. And then there's the push where you're actually pushing out, you know, content that is citable, that is highly citable. As I said, you know, fresh and spicy. And when I say that, I mean like stuff that that has to be cited by an LLM because it's brand new information. If you posted something that was like things that are happening in Cannes today and somebody asked an LLM, they would have to cite a website for that because they don't have that. It's not in their training data and they need fresh information about that. Spicy would be like opinions. Like if somebody's like, Cannes overrated, it doesn't even matter. Like,
what's Crystal wearing?
Right? like that sort of thing. So LLMs are not gonna say that because they don't have opinions. They're machines. They don't have opinions at all. And people who are searching for that kind of thing are gonna want to read the piping hot tea. Like they're gonna want to like hear about the gossip. So those kinds of things. So if you're pushing out highly citable content and you know which kind of information is highly citable based on the kinds of things that you've previously been cited for, then you know that kind of thing will come from content, will come from PR, will come from that team. Pulling in the other citations, again, that's probably your classic backlink team.
I'm curious for Wix, like when you're thinking about it, what is your bigger priority? Is it having the LLM recommend Wix as the best website builder, or being cited for some statistics, some data? Like, how are you thinking about that balance?
Ideally, both.
Yeah. Well, which one's bigger though? What is the kind of ratio?
I think like honestly, ideally both. I think that they're different user journeys. So if somebody's looking for the best website builder, and they should choose Wix, obviously, then you know they will be doing a different kind of search. They'll be doing lots of research, and you know, and they'll be comparing a lot of different points. For the data point, that's a question of like affirming your validity, your authority, you know, being present for someone when they have a need. Yeah. And then, you know, that's about engendering yourself and showing that, like, yeah, I've got the chops. We are a website builder. We've been like one of the top website builders for 20 years. Like, we got it. Yeah. Like that sort of thing.
It is two different teams though. Like the team that's creating highly citable content versus the one that's managing partners and getting new content created or existing content updated. Do both of it, but then figure out how to allocate the resources accordingly.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Okay. So it's a good segue into our last layer. This is sort of the culminating layer of all the work that has been done in the previous three, which is trust. And a lot of actual Crystal's work around agentic has to do with that layer. So Crystal, how would you say in a nutshell you can get an LLM to recommend your brand or even act on it in the world where agents are acting on behalf?
Yeah, so I think it's about making sure that you've done all of these things in the elements. From an agentic point of view, there's loads of protocols that have trust built into them. So like the A2A protocol, the UCP protocol, the ACP or AP2 protocol, there's tons of them. All of these different protocols have trust built in them. There's agentic handshakes, there's like security things that you have in place. And this means that when agents come to your website, they know that they can transact successfully and safely. And that's something that's really, really important. I think that when we're thinking about, you know, other opportunities for people to interact with your brand via LLMs, I think it's important to remember that, you know, you're part of their day, right? And so if they trust you, then and they're one of your customers, then they can add you as one of their Claude connectors. They can add you as something that they're using every day, and then you become part of their memory within ChatGPT. So then when they say like, oh hey, you know, I want to do this new project, they will automatically tap into the tool that you have there. And I know I'm talking loads, but the other one that I think a lot of people overlook, which is like less technical but super important, within agentic optimization, you have your imperative and you have your declarative. Imperative is where you have like your MCP and tools can use you and like all of that sort of stuff. And then there's declarative, which is where you just tell them stuff, right? So do not overlook your support documents. Like you were saying that sometimes within, people are saying, this is how you do something with Photoshop. And like, they will have got that from somewhere. So make sure that all of your support documentation is up to date, is correct, is accurate, and gives them all of the information. This can even include like directions for how to get to your door, right? If you're in an office block and you've got to ring the door and knock 3 times and jump on 1 foot, then you should put that on your website. That's how you get to our door. This is where we are. That sort of thing. And that will help agents, will help tools to build trust, to let people to access your brand and interact with you.
A lot of your work, Leigh, at Semrush has been building the mechanisms for trust. What would you add to what Crystal just said?
I would say it's also thinking about just the human sentiment. So like if you're asking ChatGPT or Gemini, is this company trustworthy? Like, what are the reviews? Or is there anything I should be worried about? It's going to go look for sentiment, probably on places like Reddit, where it's more unfiltered, or Trustpilot, if it maybe the Better Business Bureau in the US. It's going to go look at relevant sources within that industry to figure out, is this company trustworthy? And it's going to report back like, we're not going to recommend this product because there's customer support issues or people have challenges returning the product. So you need to make sure that your ecosystem of sentiment content is positive, and if there's an issue at the business level, you might need to resolve it. In the past, maybe you could have pushed it under the rug. You could have done some reputation management to get it onto page 2 of Google, which is where the best place to hide a body. But now LLMs are looking for all of that content. Yeah. So if you have underlying problems, then you have to figure out a way to resolve it.
Yeah, and there's like layers of resolving those problems. Yeah. There's the sort of like, I'm going to hire someone to be my Reddit manager and to respond to negative comments. There's that piece, but then there's the piece around policy and practice. Yeah. If people are complaining about your cancellation flow, yeah, someone in Reddit could have really great responses to that, but maybe it's also time to look at the cancellation flow. So, and that involves a much more senior group of stakeholders to make those changes happen. Yeah. So again, not super simple, but quite important. Yeah. Anything else, like Kevin, Pat, on the trust side that you're seeing as important for brands trying to build trust?
Yeah, I learned trust is the most important ingredient in this world today, period. It's the number one thing. If you lose, it's hard to get or gain and very easy to lose. I have the privilege that I do these user behavior studies where we recruit a panel of average users, 40 to 50 people, and we give them tasks in AI mode or ChatGPT, and then we record their behavior and their thoughts. So they have to speak out loud what they think. And in a recent one, we asked people to purchase high-priced items or products, from insurance to washing machines. And what we found is that 75% of the time, when users encounter a short list of products, they'll pick the first one. It's almost like classic search, right? Number one results wins. Same in AI search, but there is one thing that trumps that behavior, and that is trust. So we saw that when people saw a brand in that shortlist that they know and trust, it doesn't matter where it's ranked. It could be ranked at the very bottom. They will always go with that. And that is so hard to measure, but so important, because we talk a lot about how brands show up and how they're cited, but not how people select the brands that they're seeing, right? And so I think we need to do a lot more work there. But a simple proxy are classic brand and brand recall surveys, right? What we used to do a long time ago, and I think that's coming back on fashion strongly, because it is a proxy to understand, does our user base, our audience, our ICP, our prospect, do they even know us? And then what do they think about us? Critical.
Yeah. I think the thing, just to add to that, is that I think the fastest growing area for us is the primary research function. I think that is like, if you are not actually talking to your customers, like at scale and at like velocity and across different pockets, I think that you're missing, and you're trying to kind of like game the system a little bit, and that continues to be the thing that like adjudicates even internal conversations, because ultimately, Crystal, like you're identifying, like we were talking about, there's so many things that you can do, but it's really hard to sort out the things that you really should do that are going to move the needle. And I think we've used that as a way to kind of verify, like, yeah, you know what, this is the verbatims, even if they're not statistically significant, because it's one, but that really is going to drive adoption, kind of the organizational rallying around, okay, we really do have to go fix our cancel flow, or we really do have to do that, because you're asking tons of other people to go do that work. And I think that's where you run up against organizational change adoption and like really doing something about all the things you need. Otherwise, you end up with having all the insights but inability to act against them, and that's the risk.
Yeah, it is. It's I used to work at Qualtrics, and of course we gathered a lot of experience data, and I see many marketing teams gather a lot of operational data, a lot of operational KPIs, but I can see a rise of experience data in marketing organizations for that reason. Okay, we're almost about time, so I thought I'd open it up to all of you. Any questions that you might have for our speakers, or any comments you might want to share? Yes, in the back.
Hey, I really like what Kevin just said on trust being the most important metric.
I'm going to quickly repeat the question for the recording. So how do we measure trust at scale is the question.
Yeah, there's a couple ways. One, I would say, is blind brand recall studies or surveys, right, where you basically recruit panels of potential customers, but you're not revealing who you are, and you give them a set of different questions to choose brands that they would consider, right? I think from a B2B perspective, it's also worth looking into like transcripts and recordings of sales calls and that whole process, what we learned from our CRM data about even how clients bring up rejections or pushback, and where there is a push and pull. And I think AI is a great way to pull structured data out of those unstructured recordings. And then at the end of the day, there's also something to be said about retention metrics, like from channels like email all the way to product, right? So how good are we at retaining our customers over a certain amount of time? But to your point, right, I don't think there's a good number one trust metric that is easy to get and easy to grasp out of a tool yet. But maybe Adobe built something for us.
Well, I mean, there's some stuff that always gets, we try to reinvent things like NPS, I think, every year, but then we keep going back to the same thing. And one of the things that we've done is we also tried to reinvent it like a year ago. But you go back to a really well implemented infrastructure where you're actually reaching out to folks and asking them about these things. I think retention is also incredibly important. And it doesn't have to be retention from a paid perspective, even retained usage. People are coming back in some way. I think that is those two things seem to move together.
Yeah, I think the return visitors, so people who have an SEO background are always chasing the new customer, but the return visitor is super, super important for lots of different reasons. I published a blog on this recently. I spoke at SMX about it as well, but Google has personalized intelligence that they're rolling out now. It's live in the US and in beta, I think, and it's going to be rolling out eventually, and I think you can see it in lots of different stuff. So personalized intelligence is essentially Google using your Google history, your email, your YouTube subscriptions, all of your different Google touch points to help to personalize AI mode in search, and also how you use Google Gemini as well. And essentially, if a brand has a good relationship with that customer, then you will show up more in those. And so the return visitor who is constantly in that ecosystem is more likely to be shown in that sort of element. So if you're constantly increasing your return visitors, then that's an idea that indicates that they trust you, that they're coming back to your content, they're using your content as a resource, they're tapping into your content from other channels, and that I think is probably of the metrics that we currently have is a good one to see going up and to the right.
I'll also add that a tool like Semrush allows you to measure sentiment across all LLMs. So that's also an interesting metric to track. And we internally at Semrush are also looking at hedging language, because LLMs are actually quite positive about most brands. It's really hard for an LLM to say, do not buy this product. But if they say, some users say, or some users have reported that, it's hedging language that indicates that there's a lack of trust, because this layer of trust is trust with your customer, but it's the trust that an LLM also has in your brand that would allow it to recommend you, or in the future, or actually now, act on you as agentic becomes more prominent. Yes.
What would you recommend employers who are in need of job candidates? What would you suggest that they do to be more on candidates' radar? How would you recommend that employers manage that?
As in hiring for a role that oversees a program like this?
No, just hiring, period. So when someone's looking for work, for instance, that's typically like something that we've done with like SEO, but as we kind of move into this new era, like how does that apply from the employer's lens? Like what should they be doing?
Just quickly repeat the question. So
Sorry.
what should employers do in the era of AI search to attract qualified candidates to their organizations?
Yeah, so I think that it goes back to looking at like the kinds of websites that are cited for that type of thing. So if you have a query that's like best microwave, there'll be a certain type of website that's cited for that. We did research on this. I think Semrush has also done research on it as well, about like, for certain queries, like product pages will show up top, or blogs are more likely to show up for certain types of queries. So for queries where people are asking about your company, because like if I was going to apply for a job at at Adobe or wherever, I'd say how is Adobe for PTO, or how are they for employee benefits, or that sort of thing. So ask a few of those questions as if you were a user and see the kinds of websites that are showing up for that. It's probably going to be things like Glassdoor. There's probably going to be, other, LinkedIn will probably show up. There'll probably be a few other those. And if your Glassdoor is a mess, like you should probably do something about that. If you don't have your about page, rock solid. If you don't have your careers landing page rock solid, that'll be something to think about as well. But I think it comes back to look at the things that are owned by your domain, both like your literal domain and also like your Facebook, your LinkedIn, your whatever. And then also look at the kinds of websites that are most likely to be cited. So this is the pull, right? So look at the citations that are out there in the ecosystem and see how you can reverse engineer that. And then where possible, I think like, a little bit of PR about like how great your company is, applying for things like, I think the Campaign has like best employer of like the year, those kinds of things, which will again give you good correlation between named entities that are related to your industry, for instance.
We have time for one couple more. Yes.
So we are seeing that we're starting to lose traffic to our website.
I'll repeat it for the recording, like how we're thinking about the importance of the website versus third-party citations. I love this question. Whoever wants to take it.
So I'd say, I think it's pretty clear we've hit peak traffic in probably 24, right? Like that's not gonna come back, it's gonna go away. We're probably gonna get to some sort of baseline of a little bit of traffic, and the traffic that still arrives is gonna be of incredibly high quality because it's very qualified people. I also think that every company in business strongly needs to figure out whether they need to care about citations or mentions. Citations, like if you're a review business, like a G2 or a Trustpilot, your goal is to shape the AI answer with citations for your customers, which are the vendors that are mentioned. But if you're a DTC brand or a B2B brand, like you want to care much more about the mentions than the citations, right? Because you can only influence citations so much. And even if people don't click citations, that's another thing that I saw in my user behavior studies and that Pew Research has published about, and a couple of other research labs. People do not click citations, except for very, very rare cases where they want to maybe verify the information. So I would care much more about that visibility aspect and how you're being kind of described. And that's where I agree, like the job of the website changes as in so far that we now have more bots visiting websites than humans. We've crossed that threshold a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, and so that does not mean that the website is not important anymore for humans, but for example, the homepage is a lot more important these days because the behavior that most people will do when they research a product is they'll get a recommendation, they'll accept it, they open a new tab, they go directly to their website. Impossible to reverse engineer where they come from, right? Unless you do something like a Heidi House survey, like where did you hear about us or how did you hear about us? But it's very hard to attribute. So the homepage is much more important these days. The content you have is much more agent focused these days. And again, it's a transition, not a hard cliff. And so the website becomes more of a database for bots than the brochure for humans over time.
And I would also just say, I think changing or shaping the internal perception around traffic declining, it's not that you've done anything wrong. It's not that the business is facing a unique challenge. Like, yeah, we've hit peak traffic. We can look at the traffic that's coming from LLMs, but to Kevin's point, there's way more people that are probably being influenced by seeing a brand recommendation within the answer and it's coming in through direct. So I think every company should be asking within their sign-up flow or their contact sales is how did you find out about us? We see at Semrush more than 10% of new customers interacted with AI at some point. So I think that number is probably a little bit too low if you include AI overviews and ChatGPT and Gemini. But start looking at that data to see what is the true impact of our AI visibility.
And I think where possible as well, like try to see if there's opportunities for you to create new channels via AI. So like on Wix, you can build a website in ChatGPT with the Wix app. You can build a website in Claude with the Wix website. There's other things that we can do like that go back and forth the other way. So depending on the type of website that you have, it's also the case that yes, it does become like the HQ for your product data and your brand data, which I think is like, people are like, oh, are they going to go away? I'm like, I don't think they will, because I remember the days of FTP and nobody wants to go back to that. And so, and it's the only place where you can like set out your stall for your brand in your own way. Like if you think about LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever, you have to adhere to their guidelines, and your website is the only place where like you can shape it how you want it. And I think that that's important from a sort of brand play, especially when physical stores are less relevant and things. So I think that it absolutely will still be the case. But look at opportunities to meet customers where they are, and then see if that also helps to supplement the additional traffic.
We have a product that agents are actually already selecting for our customers, and I was wondering if any of you have been seeing kind of like what we're trying to figure out, like how do we impact that? Mm-hmm. Like how do we make sure that the agent, as often as possible, is actually selecting our database, Neon and Postgres. So I'm interested if any of you have been witnessing that. It's a new world for us, for sure.
I say that the first thing is, do you have enough contextual content on your website, on your other own channels that talk about how neon grass is like the best solution for a particular use case? Is it an industry? Is it a particular role? Can you create enough content that gives the LLM enough confidence of this is going to solve this exact person's needs?
And additionally, are you creating opportunities for LLMs for agents to access different parts of your product that are above your competitors? So one of the things that people forget about the agentic web is that like essentially what's happening with the agentic web is they're remaking the web for agents, right? That's an agent first web. So there's all these different protocols, and we had a call with Rita, and she was like, that's hilarious that you're saying that. I'm like, but like all these protocols are basically like the guardrails. It's like toddler proofing a house is what it is. Because they want the agents to be able to go off and do things, but like if you just leave them to their own devices, they will get into all sorts of trouble. So all of those protocols, it's essentially like putting those little things on the side of the corners, or like covering the plugs. That's essentially what's going on. So if it's the case that you're further along that path and you're a safer space for an agent than your competitors, then they will choose you. And if you have more things that are compatible with the particular type of agent that is choosing you, so I don't know if it's e-commerce or what have you that you do?
Through basically like an engineer is going in, typing I want a database, and then it selects the database as they're building an app for them.
Right, and so then there's other things. So like for instance, if your database is really light and is really easy, really like token efficient, for instance, that's going to be a differentiator for you as well, because I tried to export like the view source of a web page the other day into Claude, and they were like, too many tokens, and I was like, really? the HTML was too many tokens. So if you have your database, for instance, is like really token efficient, then that would be a differentiator for you. If you have you're using lms.txt as, for instance, as a markdown like sitemap, which a lot of people have that, for instance, that might also be something that's a differentiator for you, and that they're able to access that really quickly. If you have an MCP that's really well configured, that also will be a differentiator for you. So there'll be technical things that make it really easy for the agents to access you. And at the moment, like the agentic space is like, it's kind of early days. Like I feel crazy that it's early days, but it's kind of early days. So depending on which industry you're in, you could have first mover advantage. That might be where you are. And like, I think run with that. I think if you can run with that as like your team, if you're like, hey guys, I got this, then like that's you all day. That's enjoy your promotion.
Yeah. I'll say I love the idea of agents acting as toddlers. It makes me very nervous for the future of the internet, having recently raised 2 toddlers myself. But also I think it is a great opportunity to also mention that we just published an entire course on agentic search optimization, and it's available on semrush.com/AI search. It's written by the lovely lovely and talented Crystal Carter.
Interview with the lovely
And has an interview with me. So yeah, so check it out. She goes much deeper into these topics in that course. Yeah, one final question.
So I am from the wonderful world of digital PR, and obviously I've kind of got two folds of questions. So basically,
I'll quickly repeat the question. Sorry, everyone. So the first one is, should the shift be more focused on corporate comms, correct? Like, should the PR team be more focused on that? And the second question is around, how do you measure success for PR? What would be the KPIs?
Real quick, I'm curious, what were the KPIs that you would be reporting on to clients for campaigns that you were running previously?
So previously we'd be looking obviously at links, the quality of those links, the ADR, the relevancy of those like publications, traffic, keyword rankings. All of that.
Would you be looking at how well or how relevant the mention was within the article, or was it just like this company was cited for a stats
we would
page?
look at sort of the anchor text and sort of like that would sort of score slightly higher. But obviously, so what I would always do with my PR campaigns is create a campaign page and then see how that's ranking, the internal links, where those are ranking now, but it's sort of like more sort of able to get mentioned now, I think, with the AI stuff anyway. So it's even like that, creating campaign pages, is it worth it? But I sort of feel like it is, because like just putting those in like FAQs, where there's an opportunity there to answer questions.
I don't think it's an either or in terms of creative or corporate. I think that the creative element needs to tap into a few core tactics in order to be visible and useful for the AI narrative. So one thing, and Mike King is also on the bill for this week, and he was the first person that I heard talking about semantic triples, and it is. And it's so beautiful in its simplicity, and it's literally just like Wix is a website builder, like subject, predicate, noun, like and basically. So one of the things that I've seen in like PR sometimes is that like you have the press release and it never says like just what it is. Like it just like, or you go to a website and it never says what it is. So when I first started looking at AI visibility, there was an agency, and they were like, we don't rank for like best agency in Paris or something. And I looked at their website and they said, we are an award-winning creative agency that serves clients around the world. Then I looked at their competitor and it said, we are an award-winning creative agency that serves clients around the world. And they all had the same thing. So you have to have a clear message, and ideally, if you can get a semantic triple that's like, and you can mix and match a little bit. Like they can be more complex. Like it can be like Semrush gets results, like that sort of thing. So you can mix it up or whatever. But if you have a consistent messaging that's in the creative campaigns, because the creative campaigns, they inspire people, they engage, they're really good on social. Like they will drive traffic to your website. But just make sure that within the creative, you've got the business end. And that should also be included in like your campaigns overall. And if you're getting a press release, it's not just about getting the link, it's about getting that phrase in the Daily Mail or in the, in People magazine or whatever it is. And I'm sure other people have things to say about that. So like, I know it's something you were talking about as well.
Yeah. So I would go against like the gap of citations or AI mentions, which we can quantify, right? So there's I think a very clear target to be defined. Then we spoke about placements earlier, and I think that's like one of these things that kind of comes back into fashion, but it's very hard for most teams or companies to say, okay, we know we need to be present on tier 1 media and insert publication here. How do we do that? And that's, I think, where you come in. But at the end of the day, I think there's like an element of audience building that fuses with PR right now. And a really good example is the company Okta, who hired a newsroom team of 6 full-time journalists. And they're basically doing second touch media and news reporting, right? And they're building a direct relationship with the audience. And I think that's really the way to go, because you're then less sensitive to any algorithms or filters or so, right? Like I think audience building, direct relationships, absolutely critical. And as a PR team, you often have the leverage to say, okay, let's invest in some proprietary research, not just for the whole AO/GO world, that matters for sure, but more as like a way to build audience, and let's measure engagement and touch points as a goal for PR.
I can add just one other thought, just from Adobe. The way we've thought about it a little bit differently, which is interesting to kind of hear. And it was with the ramp up of PR being such an important driver of just prompt volume, we've actually taken the more creative side, to use your parlance, kind of down closer to more of like almost an execution squad level team. And so the metrics are more like engagements and that sort of thing that you'd find in like a squad that's like trying to run a business week over week. And then we've actually walled off a good amount of money for like just the corporate comms that you need to do at a digital level just because you know you need to do it. And it's like, it's so important for like making sure that you show up like as a best employer and all this sort of stuff. And we all know it, and we all know we need to do it, and then we're holding it to like a reach frequency and then a reposting, make sure that you have the volume, like just the kind of the eating your veggies sort of principles that you've got on the growth card, we just kind of apply it to the same. And we don't really overthink about like, do we really need to optimize it? We just know we need to be everywhere, and we need to accelerate any sort of piece of news that we've got at the corporate level. And we've kind of walled that off to allow that team to work independently, but then kind of borrow on all the investments in the rest of the organization. And I think that's allowed that team to just say like, you know what, we have to get this out in Japan, which is a really important thing about, you know, the green nature of our buildings. And they just make the local decision to scale that, and they have access to resources. I think that's how allowed us to move really fast on that without really embroiling them in like grindy measurement components, frankly, because they just know, like really good PR shops and teams just know what's going to work in the local market.
That ends in trust, actually.
Really
back to that trust between people internally, also important. Okay, so we're at time, sadly. I could talk to you all for the rest of the day, frankly, especially with this view and this wonderful audience. But one just final speed round. If all of us here went home and sat in our desks tomorrow morning, what is the one thing that we should work on? Just a quick speed round, starting with you, Leigh.
Can you find a way to bring the organization together around one North Star?
Crystal?
I think just make sure that you know your baseline for what the LLMs know about you and what they know like in their core information.
Yeah.
Build a direct pipeline to your audience, right? Like when was the last time you did any research or conversations, and then why has that taken so long? And build that work stream.
Like product and customer value. Like everybody across the organization understands exactly how the customer is going to benefit from whatever aspect of the product, and they can get access to it.
I love it. It's a new era of customer centricity, which is exciting, I think, for anyone working in marketing. So thank you so much for being here, for your time. Thank you, speakers.